Welcome back to another video. In the last video, we talked about while loops. While loops allow you to run a block of code or clause a indefinite number of times until the condition is true. That's why they're called while loops. In this video, we're going to learn about a different type of loop called a for loop. So a for loop is a little different. It allows you to run a block of code a set number of times. So let's take a look. We actually need another function to use a for loop, or we're going to in this video. So just like while, for is the same way. You just type out for, and the syntax is a little different. So when we did a while loop, we wrote out while, and we had our condition that it could have been while maybe we have some variable input. Let's do user name, and it's Jason, and then while the username does not equal Bob, we do something, right? We have a clause. So for the for loop, we don't have a condition like that. We say for, and we give a variable name that we come up with right now. So we're going to say for num, for number, in, and we want to do a set number of times. So we have to use a new function called range. So we'll type out range, and anytime we use a function, we use those parentheses, right? And inside of the range function, we need to pass parameters. Now, one thing that we don't know how to use right now is the range function. So let's actually, instead of me just typing it out, let's use help. So if we just run and type out help, and let's type out range, and let's see what the help documentation has to say about range. So scroll up to the top, there's a lot. Okay, so help on the class range in module built-ins. So it's a built-in function. There is a way to call it with a stop only. So where do you want to stop in your range? You can give it a start, a stop, and then optionally a step. Okay, let's read the description. Return an object that produces a sequence of integers from start inclusive. So whatever number you provide as the start is included in your range, to stop exclusive by step. So exclusive means that the stop point is not going to be included because it's exclusive. Oops, I highlighted. Okay. So for example, for a range I, where I is the start and j is the stop, you get a range of I plus 1, I plus 2, all the way to j minus 1. Still sounds kind of confusing, right? So if you just look at this example, range of 4, you get a series of numbers from 0 to 3. So first of all, you might be looking at that and thinking, wait a minute, why do we start at 0? So in programming, we pretty much always start at 0 when we're counting. We don't start at 1. So it actually works in our favor in this case. So if you think about it logically, we have a range of 4. So you can think of that as saying you want to produce 4 numbers. So you start at 0 and 0, 1, 2, 3. That's 4 numbers. So you'll notice that 4 is the stop. That's where when we use one number like that as a parameter, we're only passing in one thing. This version of the function is called, where it just knows that that's where you want to stop. And we know that the stop, where is it? From start inclusive to Oh, that's weird. Okay, so I highlighted it and it moved it down here. So let me just, it like changed the definition. I like highlighted and moved it. Okay, so help, range. Okay. So stop is exclusive, right? So range of 4 is the stop. We don't include 4 in our range. We produce 0, 1, 2, 3. Okay? So let's like see what this looks like now. So we have an idea of how to use it. We can just provide one number, or we can provide a start number, an end number, and we can even tell it how do you want to count. What do you want, steps of 1, 2, so you could count by 1s, 2s, 3s, etc. So let's actually uncomment this code. I'm going to get rid of the while code. And let's start writing comments from this point forward, because I really want you to get in the habit of commenting your code. It'll help you in the future. So we'll say testing out for loops. Okay. And we're going to say for range of 10. So we know that that's going to loop through and give us a range of 0 all the way to 9. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And what the range function does, it just gives you that range. We haven't done anything with it. But with the for loop, we can say for every number in the range, do this clause, do this block of code. So this num could be anything. It can be X. A lot of times you'll see I. Usually that stands for index, but it's a variable name, so you could really make it anything. Try to make it useful for how you're using it. So for our case, I'm just going to call it num for number. And let's print the num so we can see what this does. So when we run the code, it just prints 0 through 9. Okay. So what if we wanted to print some text as well? What happens if we type inside of the print function and we say number and we try to add these together? We want to say like number space and then maybe like number 1, number 2, number 3, or number 0, number 1, right? What happens if we do that? So if we run that code, we get an error, a type error. You can only concatenate strings, not integers, to strings. So you can only concatenate strings together. So how could we solve this? If you guessed string, you were right. So the function we learned about before, where you can convert a number to a string. So now if we run this, we get numbers 0 through 9. Okay, that's useful if we want to run our block of code 10 times. But in our case, like where we're printing out the actual number, maybe we don't want to start at 0, right? So let's go in and let's add a start, just like the help function told us about. So if we say start at 1, end at 10. Now watch, just in case you forgot, see what happens. We started at 1, we ended at 10. We only get to number 9, right? Because the end of the range function, the parameter that's provided for end, or for stop, it doesn't get included. It's exclusive. So if we wanted to go from 1 to 10, we'd have to say start at 1, end at 11. And see, now we get all of the numbers 1 through 10. Now the step that they talked about is just the third parameter option. You just type a comma in, just like all the other functions when you have multiple parameters. And so if we say 2 and run that, we start at 1 and we count by 2 until we get to 10, right? But since we're counting by 2, we end up with, well, until we get to 11. But since we're counting by 2, we get 1, 3, 5, 7, 9. Because 11, right, it ends at 11. So if we wanted to include 11, we'd have to go up one more number because the last number is never included. So that's what step allows you to do. It just allows you to count by that amount instead of by 1. So 1 plus 3 is 4, 4 plus 3 is 7, 7 plus 3 is 10. So that's the range function. And one more thing to point out. So we learned about break and continue when we're talking about while loops. The only other place you're allowed to use break and continue is inside of the for loop. Those are the only two places, while and for. So if we come in here, and so right now if we just run this code, it runs 5 times, right? Now, what happens if after our first time we run, we say break? We know that break ends, it jumps out of the loop, right? Just like the while loop, this will break out of the for loop and it won't run anymore. So you'll get only the first run because then it hits this break and it jumps out. So continue does the same thing, but it just jumps to the next, it does the same thing as it does for a while loop, where it continues to the next iteration of the loop. So right here, actually, it wouldn't change anything because it continues at the end. But what if we added some other code like down here, like a print, and we say this code isn't, going to run, right? And remember, that's the escape character. So I can have that single quote inside of my single quote string. Okay, so that code won't run because it's after the continue. So if we run that, we never see it. We take that continue out. Maybe we'll just comment it out, right? We can do that. Now the code ran. Great. Okay, so that's for loops. There's a couple other ways you can use for loops, but we'll get into that a little later. For now, for loops, just remember it as a way of running a loop a set number of times based on the range function. And remember that you can only use break and continue inside of a for loop or a while loop. Okay, I'll see you in the next video. Thanks.